welcome to another Britflicks.com podcast. My name's Stuart Wright, and welcome to the show, Dominic Brunt. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Thanks, Stuart. I really appreciate you getting me on. Thank you.
Is this your fourth appearance? Because I think I've done every film.
I think so, yeah, maybe.
Actually, no, it's third, and I've interviewed Joanne as well.
Oh, yeah, I think that's right, yeah. And I remember the first one I had to do in a taxi, and I kept thinking, like if you do it in Leeds or Yorkshire, it just goes in and out. And I remember doing the whole thing for like an hour and a half or something like that.
Yeah.
And this taxi never dropping out. And it's really, really good. It was one of the best ones I'd ever done. I really enjoyed it. It was nice.
Well, we're here because you've got another film playing at Fright Fest, WOLF MANOR. And before we get onto that, what we are going to do is discuss 5 films that have influenced everything you've ever done in your adult life. Which is
everything I've ever done. That's quite a goal.
which I've done once. So this is the second time I've done this format, and it was fun the first time.
How did it go?
It went very well because in a way it's not about what's the best films. It's about films and their impact on you. So it can be very personal. This isn't about being cooler than school or anything. This is about, what touched you, and that's a very subjective thing. And also films, like music, I suppose, act as a personal biography, don't they? Because our own development, understanding and appreciation of art changes and whatever at different stages in our lives. And films are,
very true.
I don't know if you know this, as we're talking on the 3rd of August, it's day 4 of Duke Fest, the Duke Mitchell Film Club.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Their night at the Fright Fest is one of my favourites as well. It's absolutely fantastic. I mean, all that stuff. Because I remember, because everybody was drunk and everyone was kind of like dropping off, but then it all kicks off and then they start showing these weird kind of like safety videos, and then you can run to the front and get a Haribo and share a drink of this whiskey, and then everybody gets drunk and high on sugar again. It's a brilliant thing, but I've never done his festival.
WOLF MANOR. Do you want to give us a brief synopsis as to what WOLF MANOR is all about?
So it came to me quite late on. So I just got a phone call out of the blue from an editor I'd worked with, and he said, there's a film looking for a director. Do you fancy it? And I was like, well, yeah, I'll have a look at the script. And then straight away I was like, right, well, maybe you could do this, and maybe we could do this. And the writers, Joel Ferrari and Peter Wilde. Joel Ferrari as well, he's a massive Fright Fest fan. He's there every year. And he's one of them faces that's always there as well. So he'd written this film and he'd managed to get the backing for it. And I was like, well, you could probably do this. And they went, no, there's no backstory. That's the whole thing. We rack up 10 people, 10 deaths. A werewolf comes and gets them, and that's it. And I was like, do you know what? I'm always looking for the reasons and the subtext and the characterization and things like that really interest you as an actor or a director. And what now? Why is this? And who they? And they were like, no, but that's the whole thing. We reference the fact that there's no backstory. We reference the fact that backstories and characterization is boring and nobody really wants it. They just want to get on with the deaths and get in the special effects. I was like, yeah, I can get on board with that. It's completely different to what I'm used to, really. I quite like the balls of it, of just going, no, fuck all that stuff. We're going to do this, So I thought, right, I'm going to do that. And also Sean Harrison being special effects, definitely. I was like, yeah, without a doubt. So even before I was involved in it, the wolf was already kind of being sculpted. So me and Pete turned up to Barnsley to see how it was going, and we were like, look at that, And he said, they developed this hair in America that you can kind of get this stuff on. So you build your sculpture and then you put this hair over and it goes on, and it's almost like, rather than punching in a million hairs, you can do it this way. And we were like, that's incredible. It's like this gauze matting that goes over it. And it's all washable as well. So, and it was like a full suit that you have to get into. And Sean was saying, usually people can handle it for maybe 2 or 3 hours, but then, we've got this fella, he knows he's got to be there overnight shoots in the rain, and it's like up to 8 hours really wearing this suit, and he's going to have to do it. So we were like, all right, okay. But, and actually every night it was all right. It was just that after 6 hours, there was a bit of a whinge, So, and people were tired because it was all night shoots, and getting James Fleet involved as well. That was one of the things that the writers, Pete Wilde, who's the exec producer, was saying, I was thinking somebody like James Fleet. And we were going, well, ask James Fleet. And he was going, nah, there's no way. And I was like, I bet he would, this is a good script. It's really, for the leading man, it's an absolute bob on part. So we sent it through, and then we got an email from the agent saying, oh yeah, James Fleet wants to talk to you. And I was like, what? So I had to make this phone call with James Fleet. It was great. And But he comes from an engineering background, and I was a welder for 5 years when I left school. So we had that in common, which is great. So we got on straight away, and he said, yeah, go on then, I'll do it. He said, I don't want to shoot all night, every night. So then we had to get the location, the scheduling right, so that he could he'd start at 9 o'clock and he'd finish for like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. Then we'd go through to 6. So that was tricky, getting that right. But, rather than lose James Fleet for the sake of 3 hours a night, we grabbed him, And John Henshaw as well was fantastic, just like, I know John,
one of my favourites.
Dingle. Oh, he's amazing. He's only got a small part, but I sent him, and because he's a dingle as well. He's a fellow dingle. He's like from 20 odd years ago, he was a dingle. And I bumped into him a few times since. And he was like, "Oh, how are you doing, Dominic? Yeah, well, get me a cut off from my house to there, and then back to my house, and I'll do it." So that was John Henshaw back in, and Rula Lenska's in. We worked with before on Bait, and she's in like the animation kind of prequel at the end. At the end of the credits, we go back and explain. I got my own way about a backstory, and I said, well, maybe we explain like how this bit happens. I went, yeah, all right, then we'll do that as an animation. I was like, yeah. And I like animation. We always have a bit of animation in all our films, whether they're at the end or in the middle. But so yeah, it was just really, really good to do. Really fantastic atmosphere, really great people. We've got a gang that moves and morphs along the way, but cast and crew. We try and use people we've always used before, or from recommendations, or and a DOP I'd never worked with before, Vince Knight. It was fantastic. It made it look amazing. To night shoot, rather than bleach it all out and try and get through the night, he was using the night so everything's in half shadow, and just great. Really, really great fun. Completely invigorating. I loved it.
What are the conversations like between you and the DOP when you obviously we got that constraint of shooting at night? What are you saying you want, and what is he saying you can get?
Well, so I've got my, like I always turn up with my shot list and camera shot, shot list and what do I call it? Shot list. They're all there. The camera, I can't remember the word of it anyway. It's 2 words I always use anyway. And my book, no, I never use storyboard, no. I use, I can't find it now. I'll get it in a bit. Let me go and get it. So I do this, do my little drawings, so it's just I number my shots, and then I do my little drawings of where the camera's going to go and all that, and so that's for every scene. So I just go through that with the DOP and tell him where I want them, and tell the actors where I want them and how I want it doing, and we talk it through. And then with Vince, he's done loads of stuff in the dark before anyway, so he was used to doing that. So he'd shoot the scene. And we'd use a fixed point, like a massive moon, and we managed to cut even in Neil Myers, who does the CGI and that. He's every time we caught the lighting shot, he'd CGI'd a moon over the top of it, which looks amazing, And they're meant to be filming on a film set anyway, so we catch the odd stand and all that, and he'd either get rid of it or we'd use it for the fact that it was a film crew filming a vampire film that attacked by a werewolf, So that got us out of some trouble. But it was great. It was great. Like Adult Babies was supposed to be in the dark, but Jeff Boyle had cancer at the time, and we didn't know he was very, very ill, and he didn't want to do any night shoots. He needed to sleep at night massively. Yeah. So that was all in the daytime, really. So I'd always look forward to shooting something at night. So when this came along, I was like, yeah, definitely brilliant. So but reacclimatizing your 8 hours sleep to like the opposite end of the day was quite strange. That took a few days.
Now as a tease, Dominic, without giving too much away, what's a particular moment or scene you're looking forward to seeing with the Fright Fest audience? Oh,
there's a whole sequence. Like there's references to other werewolf films, put it that way. But there's one scene where the two characters split off into 2 rooms, and there's a border between the 2 rooms. So we put the camera on a dolly and swung between the 2. So every time somebody's talking, it swings to them and it swings to them. And then when it swings to one person, the other person's murdered. And then we have to swing by and see that slaughter. So while the camera swung away from them, everybody had to run in, and we had to rehearse it about 1 million times just to get everybody in, like get the false head in, get the arm in, get this bit, check it off, get splat blood everywhere. And there was no real was no going back from it because you had to cover it in blood, and then we'd have had to paint over it and try it again later on. So that was like a military operation. And then when we swung back in it and it all worked and we're still recording, and then all the blood pumps went, the head went, the body dropped. Then we just caught the other character at the side of the screen. Then we pan away to see them running up the stairs. It was just one of them things that you go, yeah, I planned that. That's how I wanted it, and it actually worked. So there was a huge cheer from everyone, everybody involved. It was like 50 people involved. You're a small part of it, Even,
yeah.
It was, and that really, really works. And I can't wait for the people to see that. But then somebody pointed out, oh, well, that bit in between, the border in between that you swing between. Well, you could have used that as you could have CGI'd that bit in and just set it up and done it separately. Anyway, I was like, shut up. We did it in one shot. So yeah, I'm looking forward to people seeing that.
Brilliant. Well, look, WOLF MANOR's playing on Sunday the 28th at Fright Fest. I'll put links in the show notes, 7 p.m. And now we're going to move into your 5 films that have influenced everything I've done in my adult life. Thank you for your list. I'm sure it was a doddle getting it down to 5.
It was horrible. Do you want me to read the rest of the ones? Do you want me to read the ones that didn't make the list?
Yeah, go on. Give us some titles that didn't get on the 5.
Okay, Race with the Devil, El Topo, Carnival of Souls, Virgin Witch, Sexy Beast, Yield to the Night, Diana does, Napoleon Dynamite, Children of the Stones, Seven Samurai, American Werewolf, Night of the Hunter, Blood and Satan's Claw, They Live, and these animations by Lottie Reiniger, who's amazing. I really, really love her stuff. And I was just like punching myself in the face going, well, I can't leave that off and I can't leave that off. So I just thought, right, I'm going to do these and that's it.
The way I do it is we do them in reverse date order, oldest to newest. So that'll be, I've got them in front of me in that order. It's obviously not, it's not like a 1 to 5 list. It's just 5 films, obviously.
Right, so it's not your favourite.
No. It's kind of, because what I'm interested in is how you discovered them, who you watched them with and that moment of seeing the film, because it's, the thing with great art when you discover it is it kind of just opens your mind, or it makes you believe that something else is possible. I mean, going back to Duke Mitchell, they showed a film called Bloody Oranges on Sunday, the opening night, which was a film that played at Cannes back in 2021, but it's just getting released in the UK now on a small distributor. And I can honestly say it was like rebooting my love of film, watching it. It completely and utterly took me by surprise on every level. It was absurd, it was extreme, but it had a heart, and you kind of felt for some of the characters in the story, even though a lot of it was quite ludicrous and extreme for almost like giggles in a way. But then that darkness, that black humor that exists, still boiled down to a very human story, and I was like, oh my God, I can't believe it. And it's that wonderful feeling of 2 hours pass, and I honestly thought only an hour had gone, and we were just starting the film when it finished. And I was like, I wanted,
amazing, yeah.
And I wanted more. And that's a lovely feeling that when a film has really consumed you. And so that's kind of what, that's the way I want you to see it. We're not analysing these. Well, you can analyse them as much as you want.
I'm not a good analyzer. It's like when friends go, oh yeah, that was the producer that produced this as well, and I think you found the special effects person on that was the same person that did that, and he was the first AD on the film that was. You just think, I have no idea. I just watch films. I never write notes. I don't know up to directors, and I did a bit of work last night going, right, I better know the director of that. You're asking me, but I'm not a great. I mean, does that make you not a cinephile? I watch an awful lot of films, probably every night. But I don't make all the notes. I'm not like
no, because I think that's a different interest. I think wanting to consume data and wanting to enjoy films are not the same thing. When you watch another film, you're comparing it to the other films you've watched. That's your reference point. No, knowing you. I mean, sometimes things come to the fore. Like I'm sure you know a John Carpenter film from a John Carpenter film. So there's some things that within narrow genres end up being obvious. But yeah, I'm not. I must admit, I'm the same. I mean, it's only when I'm forced to do things like this that I then start picking apart information and trying to find the links, and it's always an eye opener for me. But 3 weeks from now, I won't remember all this because there'll be another load of information. There's just not enough room in your head. And just for the listener who's not listened to this from before, it's 5 films. We do 5 minutes chat per film, and every time the dog barks at the end of 5 minutes, that's when our 5 minutes is up. So just for the listener's reference point. And you can, judging by your laugh, you can hear that loud and clear at your end. Let's start off in 1957 for Hal Chester's Night of the Demon, adapted from M.R. James' Cast in the Room and directed by Frenchman Jacques Tourneur.
Yeah.
Do you want to? How did you discover Night of the Demon? Where does that feature in your?
So this is the Night of the Demon is one of them films that I think has always just been around. Like, out of the 5 I chose, it's the only one that I actually don't remember the very first time I saw it. I always remembered the rubbish creature coming out the sky.
Yeah,
and just think that
the Chewit monster.
Yeah, just for such an amazing film that captures everything, that you just kind of like, yeah, that's not great, is it? But it's part of its charm now, I think. And I always wondered whether it was scary at the time, because it's such an old film. You kind of think, I wonder if audiences at the time were terrified at that. And it's just because we've got brilliant at doing things like, The Thing, because even you watch The Thing now and you can. I remember at the time watching The Thing, and it was when like computer graphics were rubbish, and then computer graphics started getting good, and you think, imagine The Thing now. Imagine what special effects are going to be like in 40 years' time. But they've never bettered, have they? Really?
No, not in practical. Which is, it's why I called it Hal Chester's Night of the Demon, because he was the American producer, who insisted on the monster. It was a real debate with the film. It was,
with Jack Turner. He didn't want it in, did he? And then the producer wanted it in. Yeah. So a mate of mine who's, do you know Tony Earnshaw?
No.
He's like he's a bit of he's a genre film journalist, and he wrote the book called Beating the Devil.
Oh, okay.
It's about it. It's a fantastic book, but I think it was like a limited release because you can see it. I think he texted me, or he put something up and said, "Oh yeah, you want to go on Amazon because my book's selling for like 250 quid a copy now." And I was like, "What? That's an excuse. That needs reprinting and getting out there. It's a fantastic book, and that's full of all that stuff." So when you find out that is it Dana Andrews who plays the main lead is like drunk all the way through it, and would go missing down the pub. And he says, "Oh, if you watch this certain scene, you can hear him slurring because that night they had to get him back, and he was absolutely arsehole." And you're like, "Oh, that's amazing!"
But it's such a brilliant premise, though, isn't it, for a horror film? A supernatural cynic is scared into becoming a believer.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. Yeah, great. And it's Cast in the Runes, isn't it? It's a film of is it M.R. James or
M.R. James? Yeah.
Yeah, Cast in the Runes, yeah. But when you read Cast in the Runes, it's better than Cast in the Runes. I know Cast in the Runes is like a classic ghost story, but I just think it's better. I do. And it's the chap that plays Carswell, it just lends it that whole reality, and nobody's playing it for laughs, nobody's playing it for creepiness. It's just this absolutely straight story that just creeps you out. I just think it's amazing, and you kind of believe it. There's a scene in it that I absolutely love where they go and see the chap in the prison who was one of the Last of the Summer Wine actors.
Yeah.
And he comes out, and he's a brilliant actor, because I heard from them that recently he was like a Shakespearean actor as well. But there's a bit where all the scientists and the medical people are queued up in chairs, maybe like 100 of them, and he's on the stage, and they're doing an experiment where they're regressing him. And all of a sudden he flips and runs into the audience, and every single chair, it's all done in one shot. All the people scatter, the chairs get tipped over and go flying, and he runs out, and then he throws himself out the window. And you're like, that, I don't know how you'd rehearse that. It just looks like what they're showing happening actually happened, because everybody absolutely shits the pants and just scatters. And I love that. I absolutely love it. And there's loads of moments like that in it. Like when they had the child's dinner party on the garden
on Carswell's grounds,
the weather, and then all the wind blows over all the chairs, and the kids like go scattering, and all the mums and the parents and the guardians go absolutely flying as well. And you're like, how have you done that? I mean, I've recently read as well that, I suppose, part of Tony's book, that they got 2 massive jet engines, didn't they, and stuck them on scaffolding and turned them on. It's party, so it literally blew everyone away.
I mean, I love my favorite bit in terms of like the cynic's journey, as it were, is that when he goes to a seance to get that becomes clues to his solving the problem. It's like a man who believed nothing other than rational thinking is sitting down with a couple of old dears around a table in a terraced house, speaking to the dead, as it were.
Yeah, and he comes out, he gets that weird kind of Welsh accent, the spirit guide. And that chap's in loads of Roger Corman films, isn't he? He's like a comedy actor. I think he's in some Carry On films. So it's just full of them, like kind of British actors from that time as well that are just, are you pressing that button?
No, I'm not pressing anything.
Seen you looking down there. Don't press the button. But a close second for that was Seance on a Wet Afternoon, but I've already picked a Brian Forbes film. And was that it? Oh, yeah. You were. I knew you were.
No, I'm passive aggressive. It does it itself. This is the whole point.
Does it? Oh,
I can't tell you to shut up at 5 minutes, but the clock counts down to 5, and then it counts down the 5 minutes. Then it goes off.
Right. Well, 2 more things of that, and then I'll
go on. Fire away.
It's 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, and the best box set is by Powerhouse Films as well. It's amazing.
I didn't know it was 100% on because I think it's a perfect horror film. I mean, on every level.
Yeah.
I mean, and I did only discover it in the 21st century. For me, it only came to my attention like in the last 20 years. So it's like I've only ever seen it, putting it on the DVD myself, not because I imagine it's been on TV tons of times. I just haven't noticed. Right then.
Yeah, because I think it could probably be on dinner time as well now, because there's nothing actually gory or
no, it's
just a fascinating story.
Absolutely. Right then. The number 2 is from 1961, adaptation of Mary Haley Bell's novel by Keith Waterhouse, Whistle Down the Wind, directed by Brian Forbes, who I found out this morning was born down the road from me in Stratford in East London. Which is
is that right?
Yeah. Just a little. It's kind of as you're just looking around for things like, oh bloody hell, look, he was born in Stratford, just around the corner. So what is it about? I mean, this is a classic film in every way, shape, and form. Yeah. So what is it? Where did you do you remember seeing this for the first time? Is this a film that you've got a memory of?
I do. I was off ill, and it was like to me, because I've got favourite films that move, like your top 3 and your top 5 move, and Whistle Down the Wind has never ever changed from being my top film. It's always been my favourite film ever. It had a really profound impact on me when I saw it. I was off ill from school, and it was on just during the day, and then I kept kind of catching it over the years. I've never owned it on VHS. I just kept catching it, and then once DVDs came out and I'd left home and that, then I bought it and I kept watching it, and it's impossible to watch without being moved by the final 20 minutes. It's just the setup and the release of that is just, it's just such an incredible film. And I've read the book as well, the adaptation of the book, and the main crux of the film, I mean, without spoiling anything, because it's much more than some of its parts, and the setup is the kids go into the barn. They live in the middle of nowhere near Pendle. They go in the barn, and there's a fella there, and Hayley Mills disturbs him and says, "Who are you?" And he just wakes up, and he's a kind of a murderer on the run, and he swears at them and collapses. But the swear word is Jesus Christ. So immediately these kids just think, "Oh my God, Jesus Christ is in the stable," you know. So they do everything they can to protect Jesus Christ from the adults. And it is all about that thing of they're searching for the higher meaning of life. Now they've got this person in the barn, and all the adults are going, "Oh, shut up, just go away," you know. And they're going, "Well, what about?" And then they start asking like massively pertinent questions because they're in this position, and the adults just dismiss them as being silly kids. And you kind of realize, yeah, that's what it's like being a kid. You know, you get dismissed all the time. And it's just, and Alan Bates is just, you know, he looks like a divine person at that time in his life. Yeah. And Hayley Mills is just one of the best actresses on earth. And I just love it. I just love it to pieces. And it's in Downham near us as well. Where I'm from, Whalley.
Yeah.
Well, I'm from all over, but at one point I lived in Whalley near Clitheroe. So I've been to Downham a couple of times and walked around going, "Oh, that's there and that's there and that's there." But it's an incredible film with so many quotable lines. I don't know if if you remember it, with the little lad who plays their little brother, and they're keeping the secret from him, but he knows it's a secret. So he just keeps walking around going, "Oh, you rotten cows." And he goes, "He's not Jesus, he's just a fella." And just little things like that you just watch all the way through, and you just watch it just melting into the floor. You know, it's just a great film. And I'm not a religious person at all, but I appreciate that, you know, the story and just the innocence and the loss of innocence and the porthole into adulthood and being an adult and the loss of that kind of playfulness and what your world is as a child and what you're afforded as a child. And then when you become an adult, and it's just, you know, it's not as good, is it? And we try and make it better and try and make it as good as it was when we were children, you know. I just love it to pieces. Yeah.
No, I mean, the innocence of of childhood in film is a fun thing, because it's kind of it shows you that ability to try and be like an adult, but it's always tinged with childlike wonder, isn't it? It's never quite, because the context for them is they're not worried. They don't see any threat, do they? There's no threat to them.
No.
Whereas if you're an adult, you find a straight, whether they're a murderer or not. If you find an adult in your barn, you're not going to immediately think good things as an adult.
No, no. And that's the thing, because they think they're preserving and fighting for, and then all the kids in the area get involved, and they all believe that they're protecting this wonder and this deity, and then all the adults who are adults and know what's what believe that all the children are in danger and are trying to spoil it for the kids, but the adults are actually trying to save the kids. But then there's that other thing as well, that she brings out the innocence in the murderer as well, and then you think, no, he's kind of, and he does that magical trick of turning it all around and thinking, well, it might be worth saving, because I think he sees the light, he sees the wonder in these kids, and it's just full of, and then there's loads of little tricks in it, like he's being patted down on the hill and his arms are outstretched, and you go, oh yeah, they had the crucifix on the hill, and then there's all the things that you remember from being at school, and certain hymns play, or little chimes of little ditties going. You go, oh, that's that hymn I used to sing at school, just full of tons and tons and tons of stuff like that. Say, oh no, that was quick. That felt like 2 minutes.
Your third choice is Amicus's From Beyond the Grave, 1974, a horror anthology that stars, among many recognisable faces, David Warner, who sadly passed recently.
Yeah,
may he rest in peace. He was in the chapter The Gatecrasher. Where does discovering From Beyond the Grave start for you? Where did you see this one, and what is the appeal?
Well, I was still at primary school, very much at primary school, but my mate Nathan, I think I must have been about like 8 or 9 years old, and he had this sort of, like, my parents are, and I'm like that. I don't want my kids to watch like 15s until they're 15, or 18s till they're 18. I think it's there for a reason. But they've got mates that go, oh yeah, I've seen The Exorcist, and you're like, what? There are things in that you should never be watching at that age, and I really believe that there's a reason for the certification. However, we know when we were growing up, there was no certification on anything.
No.
But my parents wouldn't let me stay up. It's bedtime at that time, and that was it. But I think it's because they were nurses, and they kind of had that. One of them would work for 8 hours, the other would work for 8 hours, and the others, then we'd all go to bed. So, very rarely saw them together, but it was like regimented so that they could both work their 8-hour shift and still bring up a family. But my mate's mum and dad would they'd go to bed and leave us up, So when I stayed over there, I was like, yes, you could nip out the front door and just wander the hills if you wanted to. It was just like, that was paradise to me. I was like, I can't believe this freedom that you've got. So we stay up and watch films, just watch telly. And one of the ones was this From Beyond the Grave. And we were like, yeah, let's watch a horror film. And for years, I thought it was a Hammer horror film. And I know it's the Amicus now. But yeah, and I kind of regretted it straight away. And now watching it, you're just like, yeah, it's good. It's a good anthology. It's brilliantly put together, but it's not really super duper scary. But at the time, and specifically, there's a face that comes out of the mirror. I couldn't look. It was proper like I had to avert my eyes. I was like, and I didn't want to pretend to my mate that. Well, I was trying to pretend to my mate that I wasn't that scared, but I was absolutely. It really, 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 really scared me, and it kind of started my fascination of horror films as well, because you kind of don't like it, but you like it, And you felt safe because it's behind the glass, but. I think that was my first twinklings of like horror is amazing, and it physically can hit you in the chest, even recently things like It Follows and The Babadook, they've done that recently, where you just kind of go, what? This is a great idea. And I know, like, The Babadook was a bit hot and cold for some people. They didn't get it, but I thought it was amazing. But yeah, From Beyond the Grave was great. And then, like, recently, I've still got my old VHS collection. I've still got like The Exorcist, The Evil Dead, and it's not called From Beyond the Grave for some reason on VHS, but I've been dragging around with me for the best part of maybe 35 years this clutch of VHS tapes, and that's one of them as well that I've kept hold of. But same, I don't. Oh yeah, so. Yeah, there's just loads of people in it. It's like, I've got a list here now because I thought I'd write it down. There's like Donald and Angela Pleasance who are great. It was great. I don't think Angela Pleasance did enough as well, because she did Symptoms and she kind of popped up in little things. But she's a fantastic actress, and she just, she looks the part. She's fantastic. And seeing her with her dad as well in that little short film was just great. And Ian Bannon as well, and Diana Dawes, Ian Ogilvy. Just a really, really good anthology, I thought. I just really enjoyed it. And what was I going to say about that? I've lost my train of thought now.
Well, what I wanted to ask you, obviously, I've been in a Yorkshire set farm soap opera. How do you rate Peter Cushing's Yorkshire accent?
It's all right. It's good. It's a bit like, hey, lad, But I thought it was all right. I thought it was good. He just plays it really creepily, doesn't he? And he's just hidden behind glass, and he comes out behind glass and things. I'm right. I remember what I was going to say.
Go on.
But, all of a sudden, like in the early 70s, loads and loads of really good top actors ended up in like these horror films. And I watched Craze with, I can't remember his name now, but it was released on Nucleus Films with Jake West. And they were saying that, and that was released in 1973. And Diana Dawes is in that. There's a few other actresses and actors, but it's got like Edith Evans in and people like that.
Wow.
Jack Palance is in it. He's the main. That's who I was trying to think of. Jack Palance is in it. And they said, well, there was a slump in like tax rebates and the funding of films, and all of a sudden, anybody that was in film, there was no films being made at all. So they just went for the nearest ones, and things like Craze were independent films, and it meant that they could get paid. So you get Edith Evans doing stuff that she should, he wouldn't do. Edith Evans in a little crappy horror film. She's got it's not a crappy horror film, but
I know what you're saying.
That's what they would see it as. They would definitely see it as that. It's our bread and butter. But it's, and I think that's why people ended up in films like that, because of that. Oh, the dog.
Go on, finish your thought.
No, that's it. I just think there was that magical period in like 73, 74 where all these massive actors ended up in like the strangest films on earth, really.
But wasn't it also, there was also the point about anybody in London, if you're on stage, for example, you could do the stage and do the day in a film, on a film set or something. There was a lot of that, I think, that went on as well.
Yeah, I read that about Psychomania. The lead chap in that says, "Oh yeah, well, I was on stage here and I was doing that, and then I said, I've got time to do that film." So I got all my mates that were in the play, and they were on the other motorbikes, and we could finish at this time, get straight across to London, get to start the play again. Yeah.
Which was kind of a weird quirk of London more than anything else.
Yeah.
Right then, number 4 is from 1980. And it is sort of, I guess, a quintessential of what became known as the Video Nasties, although I don't think it actually ever got banned in the same way as many others. I'm talking about Robert Houston's Shogun Assassin, which I don't know about you, but when I first saw it, I never knew that this was, a kind of compilation in the sense of it's 2 of the Lone Wolf and Cub series mashed together. But, you tell me, where did you come together with this film?
Well, my mate's dad owned Accrington Video, and like we said, there was no certification at all, so you just keep getting these films out. So I'd seen them all, and horror was always our main go-to. If it was anything else, you just like Last Snows of Spring, you just didn't want to watch anything else. You just wanted even action. I wasn't even that fussed with action. It was always horror. So, and this was one of them that you kind of, you think, is it going to be a ghost? Is it going to be a monster? Is it going to be a vampire? Is it going to be loads of blood? But this was completely different because you were kind of aware of Kung Fu films, which is a completely separate genre. But this seemed so horrific and so bloody that it was definitely in the realms of horror. I'd go and watch it at a horror film festival any day, And it was I remember the colour of blood in Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah.
But this was like the same palette of blood, that bright red, kind of like almost like brighter than a telephone box red. And loads and loads and loads of it. But in the meantime, there was loads of really good fights as well. It was just this crackers film. Yeah, but then later on, learning more about it, because it's always known as his film, but it's Kenjo Mushi. I've got it written down here actually in my notes. See, this is it. That's what I mean.
No, go far away. You refer to
Kenji Misumi, and it's really his film, innit?
Of course,
He edits it together and said it. I think he didn't even get mentioned on some of the VHSs and that. So
I think Robert Houston got the rights for something like $50,000 or something from like some American cinema association. So it's like a really nefarious way of sort of this film even coming about in a way.
Yeah. And I just think it was one of the bloodiest things ever. And I think what he did brilliantly was put them two films together, because he could have released two of them and got double bubble, but I think he saw that, get rid of the talking, get rid of the exposition, get the good bits there. And because even the music, he redid the music, didn't he? And
I didn't know that.
Well, it wasn't him. I can't remember who did the music as well. I've got the album downstairs, and even the music's amazing, and that really, really good narration. And then once it starts, you're just on your way. It sets up that brilliant thing. And like all the best kung fu films are just saying, right, these people have killed that person, so he has to avenge them. And he just spends all that time wandering around with his son in the cart, walking from town to town. He's kind of like, he can be paid in food and money to avenge other people, but in the meantime, his bigger arc is to get revenge for himself. Which he does brilliantly at the end, and also it was the Mandalorian, and it was the main thing for him, wasn't it? That's where the Mandalorian story came from, Shogun Assassin.
Was it really? I haven't seen Mandalorian, so I don't know.
Yeah, it's the Mandalorian walking around with baby Yoda.
But it's such a simple story idea, isn't it? You're wrong.
Yeah, but a good story, but like with massive amounts of blood and gore.
Yeah. But it really, I mean, as a kid, like the 80s, it was a real rite of passage film. Shogun Assassin was one regularly doing the rounds that shouldn't have been. Obviously, pre-certification as well. And then post 84, when you got the Video Recording Act, it then became rare as rocking horse shit, because it wasn't as easy. Or the VIPCO release became so edited and stuff. You wanted the version that was pre-certification. So then you ended up.
That's it. Yeah.
I used to go to Underground Books, I think it was called, Manchester Underground Books, under the corn. What was under the Corn Exchange when it used to be Scuzzy.
Yeah.
And I got Cannibal Holocaust on Pirate, and I got, you got Shogun Assassin, and I paid 12 quid for these in the 80s. Wow. 12 quid.
Madness.
For a
worth like 300 quid now, aren't they? You can't even get them now. Even if you go onto eBay and type it in, you're like, I'm not paying that, I've got a Betamax and a VHS of it downstairs as well, that I just kind of keep in my little collection.
Do you have an ability to still play them though, or are they just objects for you to enjoy having?
No. I do play them sometimes, but there's a reason. When they say go back to vinyl because vinyl's better, it's kind of true. But you can't go back to VHS because VHS was shit, and it's the fact. But I do quite like the fact, because we did Adult Babies on a limited edition VHS.
Yeah.
So I hadn't played them for years. They were like objet d'art, really. And then when I got these VHS players to kind of record Adult Babies onto VHS tape, and then we redesigned the case and all that, I was like, right, I'm going to go through my films again. So I have watched them all. Like The Exorcist is still great, with all the lines going down and the tracking. It felt really authentic to watch The Exorcist on VHS. The dog.
How did the VHS affect? How did the scan onto VHS affect Adult Babies? It's
good. It looks great. It just looks, it looks awful, but it just fits that film.
Wow.
Yeah, I love it. We made 22 of them, and I thought, right, I'm going to do this with these, or I'm going to sell them, or I'm going to do this, that, and the other. And I was like, I'm not going to sell them. Where am I going to sell them? So every now and again, I'll just give one away. I'll have one in my bag and just give it away to someone. So
well, look, if you've time while you're at Fright Fest, there's a documentary called "The Cults of VHS" that you might find interesting. Yeah. It's I've seen it already. It's really interesting take on.
Have you seen it? Right, because Kev Proctor, a mate of mine, is one of the producers, I think, or is something to do with it. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that one.
Because not to give too much, I won't give anything of like the what he shows you, but it dawned on me, because they do talk about that idea of vinyl revival and VHS revival, but then they go, but VHS was a shit format, so it's not like vinyl is about. There's a sound quality that's directly related to the sound produced, because it's an analog reproduction of the sound.
Uncompressed. Yeah.
Whereas on this, but what dawned on me at the end of it was, do you imagine in 2050 that someone born in 95 to 2000 is going to make a documentary about what they found on streamers bypassing child safety settings? It just doesn't even. It couldn't. I don't think, and it made me feel really sad and because I thought. Because I'm sure young people are discovering films, there's no doubt about it. But it just dawned on me that maybe that's part of the hunt, was part of the fun, part of the going to a big store that you're just trying to buy all these covers that were. Most of the covers lied through their teeth. They weren't the film you were going to see.
Oh, yeah. Awful, yeah.
And that was part of
and especially the cartoon ones, because the cartoons would show everything, and then you get it and you go, this is absolute shit.
Yeah.
This is terrible.
The airbrush didn't half airbrush over a lot of reality in terms of what a Bruno Mattei film is not what it says on the cover.
No.
Fun as they may be, they were.
Fair enough, yeah.
Right then. Well, we're going to better change a tone for number 5, and a Merchant Ivory film at that, adaptation of Kazuo Ishiguro's novel Remains of the Day from 1993.
I went to the pictures to see it when I was at drama school, but when I got into drama school, I always had that. I still have it now. That that imposter syndrome, and I have it in spades. And I know people go, "Oh, I've got a bit of imposter syndrome about it." You think I have imposter syndrome. It's a part of me, and it's debilitating sometimes. You've got to get over it. So I got into drama school, and Bristol of it was only 14 people in a year, but 3,000 people had applied to go for them places. It was a 3-year course, and it kind of changed my life. And I knew when I got the letter accepting it, I remember walking to the shop like a bit unsteady, thinking things are going to change from now on, sort of thing, or they could, certainly for the next 3 years. Then when I got there, it was full of kind of people that are in Merchant Ivory films, so there was lots of well-spoken people, and
lots of RP.
Yeah, and we were encouraged in the first year to speak RP. It was Nat Brenner was the principal there, and he died during our first year, and then the next principal was like, no, literally, it's quite important you keep your regional accents. I was like, thank God for that, because I feel stupid, I was giving it a go, but I felt silly. It wasn't me, it wasn't. But then I went to the pictures and saw this, and it is about a fish out of water, and he's not a fish out of water. He panders to the hierarchy and gives his life to the hierarchy, and I was like, it just spoke to me, and also Anthony Hopkins giving that performance of a lifetime. He was just he showed that you didn't, he showed that you can do very little as long as you believe it and as long as you're thinking that as the process.
Yeah.
And I completely believed every word, and it was affecting. But, there was a documentary years ago with Michael Caine saying an actor must do nothing. And then he goes this thing, and as an actor going, I don't know what the line is, but say he said, pass me that pencil. And he goes, no, less. And so the actor goes, pass me that pencil. And he goes, no, less. So you see the actor getting more scared, and the actor in the end goes, pass me that pencil. And he goes, that's it. And you think, no, that isn't it. It's shit. But Anthony Hopkins is separate of that, because it's a thought process. And it was like it was like an acting lesson. It was brilliant. I kind of felt like I learned as much during that film as I did throughout the whole 3 years. Although the 3 years in Bristol of it was an amazing theatre school. It just gave me a lot of confidence and made me think, well, I don't mind. I don't care being an ordinary. I'm just going to get on with it, really, And so I did it, and it just came at the right time. And I still love that film. I could watch it every day, And
obviously from an Anthony Hopkins point of view, 2 years earlier he was iconically a serial killer.
Yeah,
in Silence of the Lambs. So it was such a shift, wasn't it? In terms of, I mean, what's the famous? Is it Laurence Olivier said, "Have you tried acting, dear?" When the idea of I can't do this, I can't do. Have you tried acting?
Yeah,
I mean, it really is that, isn't it? To do those two different roles is to show what acting's about. Really, is that he's as believable.
Yeah, and he's not
running
across the screen, screaming or anything like that. He's absolutely considered, and he acts in his own space and time, and you feel like everybody has to go around him. I mean, he is the leading man, so he's allowed to do that, but you just couldn't take your eyes off him, Even Shadowlands as well, and he breaks down at the end. You just think Anthony Hopkins is one of my favourite actors, and you could never be him. No matter what you do, you can never be as good as him. I know, I played mandolin and practiced for years and years and years and years and years, and got to a certain standard. But then somebody will come along and play brilliantly. You just want to smash it against the wall, But so there's a difference between that and Anthony Hopkins, because you still look up to him, you still learn from him, and still think, "Oh my God, what is?"
When you just out of interest, when you're learning acting at school, acting drama school, as it were, and you see someone like Anthony Hopkins, who doesn't act, it's like seeing people like him. Some people have got a presence and some people haven't. I'm not even sure it's even acting half the time. It's just that, people say, don't they, I could watch them read the phone book kind of thing. It's almost like they're captivating in of themselves.
Yeah, but there isn't. It's not just that. I think just because he's clearly had to learn the lines, but it's the pacing and his timing of every single delivery of every single line. He's minutely accurate to the nth degree. I just amazing, you know. And like, I don't watch films to watch the actors, you know, apart from maybe Robert De Niro and thingy, but they just seem to be in a different stratosphere. And so the lowly soap actor in me just looks at them going, you know.
Well, look, that was a brilliant round of 5 films. I'm just going to run through the list again, just to remind people what we've discussed. So 5 films that have influenced everything I've done in my adult life, according to Dominic Brunt, are Night of the Demon from 1957, Whistle Down the Wind from 61, From Beyond the Grave, 1974, Shogun Assassin from 1980, and then I jump into the 90s for 1993's Remains of the Day. I think that's a wonderful quintet of films, and obviously, as you said at the beginning, it was 5 chosen out of many others that could have featured in this list. But I think it gives a real insight into you as a film lover.
Hopefully, yeah. I could have chosen the others as well. And just talking about that, saying about that Seance on a Wet Afternoon, you kind of think, oh, maybe I should have put that in. It's such an amazing film. It's one of them films that nobody's really heard of. And somebody, an actor called Pat Lally said, oh, Brian, you like Brian Forbes. Have you ever seen Seance on a Wet Afternoon? And I watched it. And I think, honestly, everyone should try and watch Seance on a Wet Afternoon or any Brian Forbes film. Yes. I don't know why there's so many British directors that are lauded and everybody ignores Brian Forbes. He's one of our best directors. His films are bob on every single time. All of them are, you know. I mean,
to my shame, up until end of last year when I had the novelist on, Cathy Unsworth, I wasn't even aware of the film. That's kind of, and when I watched it, I was blown away, and like. I was a bit like, why don't more people know about it? And she was basically saying she's made it because she's written this book called Bad Play Blues, which is a kind of fictional retelling of a real unsolved murder in 1960s London. It's an amazing book.
Right.
And so we did 5 films that influenced the book. Yeah. And one of them was Seance on a Wet Afternoon. And another one was
great.
Killing of Sister George, The L-Shaped Room, which is amazing.
Oh, The L-Shaped Room. See, that another one. Yeah. There's something called The Whisperers as well. I think that's Edith Evans, isn't it? I think that's Edith Evans as an older lady, and she's just, you know, why is he ignored? You know, when all these amazing films are there, it's incredible. You know, he should be held up there with Ken Loach. He really should. You know, and it just seems mad that Richard Attenborough is there. Everybody's going, oh, you know, and then Brian Forbes is just completely ignored. You know, I mean, what a clutch of films he made.
Right. Well, I shall continue my mission then to keep raising awareness. But it just gives me to say, good luck at Fright Fest. I'm sure you don't need it. And thank you very much for giving your time on the Britflicks podcast.
No, you're absolutely welcome. And it's always a pleasure to speak to you. And thank you so much for your continued support. And I'm going to grab you for a pint as well at Fright Fest.